In this video, we're going to be replacing the parking brakes on this 2008 Acura MDX. Okay, we're going to remove our rear wheel. It's going to be a 22mm socket. Okay, so we're going to remove our caliper here. We're going to do that with these two 14mm bolts. Okay, so our bolt here is spinning our pin. So what we're going to do is put a 19mm wrench in back and a 14mm socket on front. Okay, let's try the bottom without the wrench. And that one moved freely. This point here, we can take our caliper right off, and what we're going to do is actually just swing this up on top of our axle in back here, making sure not to put any strain on our brake line. At this point, we can take off our pads. Just going to push them away from the rotor. Take them out. Do not get any grease or contaminants on your pad surface here. You can set these aside. Okay, with a 17mm socket, we'll take out our two caliper bolts. These are going to be torqued in pretty good, so we're using a breaker bar to get them free. So you can see the bracket bouncing around while we're loosening this, which is the reason I don't want to take this bolt all the way out. It'll make that even worse. There are also two shims or washers behind here we're going to take a look at. As soon as you remove this bracket, they may drop out. If not, they're located right on the inside here. You just want to be aware that these are here and they exist. They may drop out. You don't know where they go. They just clip right in there. We're going to clean ours up before we put them back in. There's one on the bottom, there's one on the top. Okay, we have two Phillips screws holding our rotor to the hub. Back those out. At this point here, you can tap your rotor left or right, or from here if you need to, and then spin here. Just you want to get your rotor worked off evenly. Okay, so here are our retaining springs and clips. If you reach around the back, you can find the back of that pin. Here's a new pin, so you're going to be feeling for this in the back. I'm going to hold that pin forward, and we're going to see if we can grab the center of that pin, twist. Sometimes you're able to just spin the pin. There we go. Just one thumb on that cup allowed us to do that. Now that's free. Our pin is also free. Okay, so we're going to hit the other clip now. Again, we're just going to try and get into the center of that pin and spin until it is free. Okay, what you're looking for on these is when they're in the locked position, they're like this. So what we were doing is trying to grab the center and spin it out. So we can go ahead and take that pin right out the back. What this allows us to do is have a little bit more freedom and a little bit less tension on our springs, which makes it slightly easier to remove the springs, which we can do right now. Just going to use a hook tool and pull our spring around this pin. And out of the shoe. Okay, and you also have this lever here that goes between the two shoes. There was a spring on the front of it. It might have fallen down inside. That's okay, we'll get there. Notice I'm not letting go of this side. What we'll do now is just slowly release this side. And you can see we have a few different things here. Here's our adjuster. We'll go ahead and remove that. Take note of which direction your adjuster was in, your threaded part to the rear of the vehicle. And it sat about there, which will give us an idea of where to put our new one. From here, we're going to leave this alone just now. We're going to take off the spring on top. Again with the hook tool. Just going to pull that spring over the lever. And we can drop this side down. Now you see we have one spring on the bottom holding it together, and this arm that is what actuates your emergency brake. This is held in with a pin and a clip. This will not go anywhere, it will not come apart, or should not come apart. But we can take our spring out of that side of the shoe and let that hang for a minute. Okay, and this was our spring that went in here, fell down. Also up top, here's this plate that we'll have to put back. Now what we can do is take our e-brake cable out of this arm. What we're going to do is grab the end with a pair of needle nose pliers. We're going to pull this forward and out of this arm. Now the next step is going to be separating this arm from this shoe. We're going to have to separate this and put this arm on our new shoe with new hardware. Okay, using a flathead screwdriver, a small flathead screwdriver, we'll try and open up this clip a little bit. And again, as long as you have new hardware, there's no need to be gentle with these pieces. You will not be reusing them. So go ahead and get this clip off however you can. Okay, once you have your clip removed, you'll notice you have a springed washer. And you can take your arm right out, discard your old shoe. We're going to reuse this. All right, on your new shoe, we're going to pick the same side that our pin was on, which is going to be this side, and your new shoes should come with a new pin. It's going to go in this hole here, where you can see it doesn't fit just by pushing it. So we're going to have to hammer that through, and then we can reattach our arm. Once our pin's seated in there flush, give it a couple of taps with the hammer. So where our two pieces meet, we're just going to put a little bit of grease in here. No need to overdo it, just a little bit. Put our two pieces together. We can seat that in here. From here, you're going to put on your washer and your new clip. This is your new retaining clip. It's going to go in place over the washer. Actually going to spin this so the arm is out. I put on our clip like this. Once we get it to this point, we'll hold it in place. We'll use a pair of bent needle nose and use the arm as leverage to push our clip into place. All right, once your clip's in place, you're going to have to bend these two ears together. What we're going to use to do that, a pair of locking pliers. Just squeeze the ears together. Check this for ease of action. Everything looks and feels good. We can go ahead and attach our e-brake back in. So on the vehicle, what we're going to do is pull our spring up and put our e-brake cable head back into position. What I'm going to do is pull our spring up and then use a pair of bent needle nose to push it up even further and lock it. Now our e-brake is in position. All right, so we're going to install our front shoe, but first we're going to put our pin in place through the back, through this hole. We're going to keep one finger on that pin. We're going to put our shoe over. And then we're going to take our new spring and locking cup, and what I believe is the hardest part of the job, to get this cup locked onto that pin, you're going to have to push in and twist while holding the pin out. Okay. Here's one pin. All right, we're just going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so the same thing here. We're going to put our new pin through the back. We are going to put it through our new shoe and put our spring and cup on. Okay, so we're going to start with this plate here. It's going to go in place. And that is going to hold back our springs. So we're going to start with the forward spring. going to put it in place here, line it up, and we're going to grab a hook tool and pull this around that pin. All right, with a hook tool, we're going to pull this spring around that pin. Okay, so we're going to install our bracket here that goes between the two shoes. It's going to go in like this. So we're going to take the spring off to set it in place. I'm going to set the back into its channel. I'm going to hold it up slightly and put our spring in. Going to get it into place the best we can. And then once we put our spring onto this shoe and tighten things up, we'll reposition that. Okay, so we're going to install our spring right now on this side with a hook tool. We're going to pull that over this pin. Okay, now what you want to do is just make sure, like on ours here, this bracket, the spring is inside this channel. We want to move that spring out of the way and make sure that bracket is in that slot and not the spring. Okay, that's what it should look like when it's correct. Okay, so we have our adjuster wheel, our threaded piece here, which we put just a little bit of grease into. We'll thread this in most of the way. Okay, and then in the back of that, we have the other free-floating side. Let's put that to position. Line these up. These are going to go in the bottom opening with, you'll see there's a longer side here on this barrel and a shorter side. The shorter side is going to go to the rear of the vehicle. Okay, so we can put that in place. And you can see here it's a little too tight, so we can open this up just a little bit. We're just going to close it to the point where it holds our adjuster into position for us. And then the last piece is going to be our spring. Okay, so this is going to go up a little higher. And our spring, we're going to hook it in to the back of one of those holes. We're going to take our hook tool and pull this in to that hole there. Okay. Now you'll notice that everything's kind of off kilter a little bit. This is the point where you want to make sure everything's lined up and together. And just give it a little spin, a little pull and push. Just center it up in here the best you can. From here, what we're going to do is put our rotor back on, put our 2 Phillips screws in to hold the rotor nice and tight, and then we'll make adjustments to how far out or how far in our shoes are. All right, now we're going to install our rotor. and our 2 Phillips screws. All right, we're going to remove this plug here. I'm going to use a flathead screwdriver. Now, if you remember, our adjuster is down about 6 o'clock. So we'll take this hole, we'll rotate it down until we see our adjuster. Okay, so our adjuster is here inside. What we're looking for is if you spin your rotor and you can hear drag from your new shoes, that means they're too far out. All right, so if we spin this and listen, hear a little drag. So what we're going to do is if you're too loose and you hear no drag, tighten up your adjuster, which is basically opening the bottom until you hear some drag. And then back it off until you don't hear any. Just a little bit at a time. Again, using a flathead screwdriver on that wheel. All right, right about there we have no drag. So that's the point where we're going to leave it. We're going to put our plug back in. We're going to use that same flathead screwdriver to put our plug back in. We're going to put the bottom corner in first, just push in the rest of it. Two caliper bracket washers. We clean these up a little bit. I'm going to put these into position. They go on this side, the outer side of your caliper bracket. Okay, we can take our bracket now, put that into position, and start to thread in by hand our 2 bolts. Okay, with the 17mm socket, we'll go ahead and tighten those down. Then we'll come back and torque them to spec. All right, we'll come back and torque them down. We can torque these down to 65 foot-pounds. All right, so we can put our pad in the rear. We got our wear indicator on this one. That's going to go in back here. We have our front. Going to go in there. Now we can lower our caliper back into position. Now because these are the pads that we just removed, our caliper should slide right over top of them. If you are putting on new pads, you may have to compress your caliper piston, but this fits. We can put our caliper bolts back in. We have them finger tight. We'll come back with our 14mm and tighten them down. If the back side here on our caliper pin spins and doesn't stop in the channel where it's allowed to, then we'll have to come back and back that up with a 19mm wrench. Once we get them snugged up, then we'll come back and torque them down. All right, okay, we're going to torque these down to 27 foot-pounds. And again, we'll use a 19mm to stop the back pin from spinning. What we can do now is take our 22mm and just snug these up in a crisscross pattern. And now what we'll do is lower the vehicle with the wheel under weight of the vehicle. We'll torque these down. All right, so now that we're down, the vehicle on the ground with some weight on it, we're going to torque these down to 94 foot-pounds in a crisscross pattern.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.